Hello, my name is Stanford Gibson. I am the Sediment Transport Specialist at HEC, and this is a Regional Sediment Management Tools and Training video. The objective of this video series is to help sediment modelers and analysts develop best practices to help them support regional sediment management decisions with high-quality engineering and science. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to edit an orthogonal 2D mesh in HEC-RAS to make it align with the direction of flow. And I'm going to use the terrain from a model that we're actually using for an active RSM study. So when you make a mesh in HEC-RAS, you get a structured grid. And so if I turn on the mesh associated with this is the default mesh. It's got cells of 100 by 100, which is way too big for this system. And they're orthogonal. They're square in the north, south, east, west direction. So the first thing we'll do here is let's just edit this mesh and then click on the perimeter. I always forget where this is, frankly, and click the Edit 2D Area Properties, and we get this properties for the debris basin. And let's just say, hey, we want spacing of 10 by 10. And so we'll generate our computation points, and it's going to overwrite the ones that you have, and we'll say, okay. And there we go. Now we have a much more appropriate mesh, but it's still orthogonal. This ends up being a mostly structured grid. There's some unstructured elements on the edge, but most of it is just these squares. Now, HEC-RAS can use this grid. We can do hydraulics or sediment transport with a grid that is not aligned with the flow. But you're going to get better performance, both for stability and accuracy, if your grid is aligned with your direction of flow. And so in this video, I'm just going to show you two different ways to do that. The first way is the way that we normally do that. I'm going to focus on kind of this main channel up here. I would do this in 3 different parts, and we're going to start with a break line. Now, the first thing that I want to do, though, is I want to measure kind of the distance of this channel. And so if I go in here and measure kind of from toe to toe of this channel, you'll see down in the bottom right-hand corner, this is like a 75-foot bottom width. And then the top width, if I go kind of bank to bank, that's 125 here. It's 100 farther upstream. And so, we're going to have a number of cells, between 7 to 10 cells across this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to create a break line. And so if I go up here and try to edit, I can't because I have one of these other tools selected. This is pretty common if you have like the pan tool selected and then you go to edit, you're like, oh no, I can't edit. All you have to do is click on this arrow. So if you ever can't edit, this happens to me all the time, click on the arrow and that'll give you the editing tools. This is the editing feature tool, but we can't use that yet because we don't have a feature. So I'm going to add a new break line. This is going to be my first break line. And I'm going to press Shift now in order to move around since I'm in the middle of adding a feature. And I'm going to just zoom in. I'm using the roll bar to zoom in. And I'm just going to do my best to bisect this channel. If this was an operational model, I'd be a lot more careful to do it actually precisely, but I want to be careful of YouTube runtime. So we're going to do it a little bit quickly. All right, so I have a break line. And so I'm going to call that channel center line. Okay, and you'll see that already this break line is kind of molding the orthogonal grid to its will. It wants these cell faces to line up with the break line as much as possible, and I haven't even enforced it yet. And so in some cases, they're already snapping to it. But I don't want to enforce this yet. I actually want to go in and define some characteristics of this break line before I enforce it. And so I'm going to go right-click on the break line. The general rule of thumb in Mapper is if you ever want to do anything to anything, make sure it's editable and then right-click on it. If you ever want to find anything in RAS Mapper, right-click on the tree. And if you don't find it there, right-click one level up or below. That's how I do it too. And we're going to go to Edit Break Line Properties. And here, you'll see our channel center line and all of our break line properties. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do repeat cells. If we were to just go in and enforce this break line, we would get one cell on either side of the break line, which is cool. The center line channel is now aligned with flow, but the rest of the channels are orthogonal. And so that's not exactly what we want. What we want to do is we want to do repeats. If we repeat these cells along this break line, what we'll get is a whole swath of the model that is aligned in this direction of flow. And so I'm going to go to the break lines. I'm going to say edit break line properties, and I'm going to say I want my near spacing, that's the spacing near the break line, to be 10. And then I want to do, let's do actually 8 near repeats. And what that's going to do is for 80 feet on either side of this break line, it's going to repeat these 10-foot cells. Now this far spacing is interesting as well, because what that does is that can actually create more aligned cells farther out, but at a larger spacing. We don't want to do that right now, and so I'm just going to make 8 repeats of a near spacing of 10. And if I say OK, and then I go to enforce my break lines, or I can right click here and say enforce my break line, or I can right click on my break line and enforce my break line. Now what you'll see is that this whole area is aligned with flow. And if I turn off the terrain, you can see that we've got all of these cells repeated outside of the center line so that this whole channel is now aligned with flow. All right, so that channel is actually kind of ready to go, except we want to make sure we get these inflection points, right? And so we're not totally guaranteed that that is going to work out to actually get our cell faces to transition right at the toe and the bank. And so we actually do want to go in and draw in our toe and our bank. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to create new break lines. And these new break lines, which I'm again going to do kind of carelessly because we're going to try to keep this runtime down. What you'll see is I've gone in here to my terrain and I've asked for plot contours at a pretty tight level, because if your plot contours are at 40, then you can't really tell where things are happening. But if your plot contours are at 1 or even less than 1, then you can actually see where the high ground is. And I'm going to update my legend with view so that the color goes with it. And so now you can see basically the contours point in the direction of minimum and maximum. And so if I come in here and say I'm actually going to do a break line along here, and I'm actually going to use one single break line. And it turns out because of the spacing we chose, the current cell spacing is actually pretty good for this toe. And so I'm going to call this the right toe. Flow is in the upper right direction, and so the right bank is always looking downstream. And so now I have a right toe break line. And now let's go and do the same thing for the bank, because you always want break lines along your high ground. And so I'm actually going to start my bank here. And then my bank's going to get a little wonky here. It's going to go up to this high ground here. And then it's going to follow this engineered bank pretty closely. You can see I'm trying to hit every time the contour line points downstream, because that means that that is the high ground. All right, and I'm going to call this right bank. All right, and then we'll go in and now look at the break line properties. And now we have 3 break lines. And I'm going to just keep that one near spacing of 10 and without repeats on both of them. So now if I just enforce these break lines, we have our cells aligned in the downstream direction, and we have break lines on our high ground and our toe to actually get those inflection points right. So if you look at my final here, in my final version, I actually did this in 3 different reaches. I did that downstream reach that I just showed you, but then we did another reach with more repeats so that we could cover this wider version as we go into the debris basin that has this curved reach. And then I did yet another one for the basin itself that has more repeats. And then I went in and I added these toes and banks everywhere on both sides so that the channel and the banks and the near over banks are aligned, but we're still capturing the high ground and the inflection point of the toe with the sort of detail that we'll want to get this right. Now, what you'll notice is that where these come together, these 3 different reaches come together, it gets a little messy. As good as the RAS Mapper tools are, it's never really possible to just use them to create your terrain without having to do any detailed editing. You're going to have to go in and do some detailed editing. And so in this case, things get pretty messy here in the transition. So what I'll do here is I'll come in and I will start editing. And I'll choose my edit tool. If I click on that and delete, I'm just going to get rid of these messy transition nodes. Things are going to fall right into place. Now, it's not always that nice, but if these centerline stations align, then it actually usually is going to turn out that well. And if I turn off the LiDAR, you can see a little bit better about what's happening. I'm just clicking on these and deleting them, and the essentially stitching comes out well. Okay, and so you'll want to do some of that detailed work. I like to go in and get rid of some of these smaller cells because they're going to drive your runtime if you use the adaptive time step. Anything like this, this zigzag triangular pattern, if you go in and get rid of some of those, they'll snap into kind of near rectangular cells. And those are some of the editing tricks that we could talk about in another video. But that's how you use a break line as your centerline station and create repeats in order to align your grid in the direction of flow. And that's really the best way to do it. It's not always this tidy if you're doing a natural system. If a natural system that meanders, you're going to have a lot more tight cells on the inside of the meander and widely spaced cells on the outside of the meander. You're going to have to go in and do a little bit more manual editing at these meanders, but this is still kind of the best practice for getting your cells aligned with your channel. There is another way to do it, however. So let's actually go through that together. So what I'm going to do is, this is my original orthogonal cells. If I turn that on, you can see those are my 10-foot cells. I'm just going to make a copy of this. I'm going to save the geometry as, and we're going to call this refine method. And we'll press OK. And so now, instead of creating a centerline station, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a refinement region for my channel. And so I'm going to zoom back over to my channel. And now, instead of a break line, I'm going to click on refinement regions, and I'm going to start editing. And so now, again, I would do this with more care in the actual study. But if you create a refinement region that includes your channel, and we'll call this downstream channel. Now you can refine the cells inside of it. Now, if I was to just go in and say, hey, enforce my refinement region, it's going to just give me the same cell spacing, but it will go in and enforce, soft break lines on the edges. And so at this point, you can do the exact same thing, except instead of moving from the inside out with a break line center line, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be moving from the outside in, which isn't as clean, but gets the job done, particularly if you want more detailed spacing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my refinement region. I'm going to edit the refinement region properties, and I'm going to keep my cell spacing 10 and 10. Obviously, if you wanted something smaller, you could. But then I'm going to go in and ask for near repeats. And I'm going to say, you know, this is about a 100-foot channel, so I want 5 near repeats so that they'll meet in the middle. And I'll say, OK. And now, again, you can right-click on the refinement region to enforce. You can press this button, or you can right-click here to enforce the region. These both enforce all the regions, just like the break lines. If you want to just enforce this region, right-clicking on it. So see, this says enforce region instead of enforce all regions. I'm going to enforce that region. And you'll see that, you know, this went pretty well, but at the center, things didn't work quite the way I'd want to. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to edit that region again. And let's actually say we want 6. OK. Right click, enforce the region. So actually, this went worse because I'm enforcing cell spacing from both sides and they're overlapping. And now we've actually overlapped more. So let's actually go in here and say, instead of 5, I actually want 4. And now I'm going to enforce this region. And now things are looking better. We've got some of these kind of big cells in the middle that are unstructured, but mainly we've got structured cells both inside and outside of the channel. It's not as good, but it does the job. And when you're dealing with natural systems that meander, and you're going to have to go do a lot of manual editing anyways, this will actually get you a better start to your meandering or irregularly shaped channel that you can then go in and move the cells around to make them more aligned. The other thing that you can do with the refinement region is make one cell wide tributaries. Let me show you an example of that. So this is another model that I'm working on. And you can see that in this model, this is a kind of a high gradient alluvial fan. And in this model, I left most of the floodplain as the structured grid, but the channel itself I wanted to align with flow. And so what I did is I made it a refinement region with a single replicate similar to the spacing of the surrounding region. But then I went in and edited it so that essentially the channel snaps to a single cell except for where it gets wider, and then it goes to one cell on each side. Sometimes I need an additional cell in there for a particularly wide spot. And you'll notice I don't always get to snap right to the edge. The snapping of the refinement region edge or the break lines in RAS does take a little bit getting used to. It is a little bit artistic, but it does give you the channel that you want that is aligned actually with the direction of flow, and that gives you most importantly, the cell edges that follow the high ground of the channel banks. And so that is actually one of the ways that you can use this tool. Let me show you one other model where we use this. So this is a model of the Chippewa River flowing into the Mississippi River in one of the upstream pools. And so what you have here is, here's the Mississippi River, and here's the Chippewa flowing south into it. And this is actually a sediment model that we've developed for RSM because there's a lot of dredging right at this confluence. You'll see, again, we started with an unstructured grid, and a lot of the overbank uses the unstructured grid, but in both the Mississippi and the Chippewa, we've used these refinement regions in order to align the grid with the direction of flow. And so you can, just by looking at this, you can tell already what we did. Obviously, we went in and we put in some break lines at all the high ground because that's just best practice. That's the first thing you do. You go in and you put in a break line any place where you have a ridge or a road where you want to make sure that your cell faces are aligned with that weir. But then we went in and we created this refinement region, and we got 3 or 4 replicates on either side and ended up with this Mississippi actually aligned with flow. Now, a lot of this needed manual editing. This didn't come out as clean as this. We moved a lot of these points around. But then we did the same thing with the Chippewa. The Chippewa also, we went in and we created a refinement region. and aligned it with flow and created replicates both on the outside and inside, did some manual editing along it. And then this little tributary, we did the same thing, but this is more of the like one cell approach that we took on the alluvial fan. And so these are the two ways in which you can align your orthogonal cells in RAS with flow. You'll get better stability, you'll get better precision, particularly for sediment transport and non-Newtonian flow. This is a best practice that you want to start implementing, and I think you'll find it'll make your models better. So this has been a regional sediment management tools and practices video. The purpose of this series is to help spread best practices in sediment transport modeling and decision making so that the models we use can help us with our regional sediment management decisions. This is funded by the RSM program of the Army Corps of Engineers, and look for more of these videos to come.